Welcome to the Get Trauma Informed podcast, dedicated to unraveling the complexities of trauma, its pervasive impact, and the journey towards holistic recovery and realignment. If your radiance has ever felt muted, like I and thousands of others, you're in the right place to reignite your inner light. I'm your host, Wellness Coach Liz Blanding, and this is the Get Trauma Informed podcast. Well, let's get into season 1 of the Get Trauma Informed podcast. And as our kickoff, I am going to share a story with you about why it is so important and why it's so personal to me as far as the Get Trauma Informed movement and the Get Trauma Informed podcast. We named our premiere Coming Out of the Shadows of Trauma because that's what trauma feels like. It feels like you're always engulfed in this big ball of fear, this big ball of doubt, this big ball of doubt, and more doubt, fear, and more fear. It's always like you're in this panic fog, and you're pressing this panic button continuously because everything in you is in always a fight, flight, a freeze mode, right? And your brain is not completely computing. And it's like you're fighting yourself, right? You're fighting to be the person that you were called to be. You're fighting for your purpose, right? You're fighting for your person. You're fighting for your family. And all of this is going on inside of you while you know that you can be this absolutely phenomenal person, but you're fighting all of this puff, right? People say, why do you want to talk about it? Why do you want to, why not just swallow it and bury it? Well, you can't swallow it. You can't bury it because that just sits there, and trauma does not go away. Trauma is progressive. So even though you may not be able to, you think you licked it, or you think that you just buried it, or you're not thinking about it anymore, it's always behind you, tapping on your shoulder. It's going to come out. Eventually, it's going to come out. Something is going to, the big word is trigger. Something is going to trigger that trauma, and the trauma that's been sitting there, it's going to come out. Now, for those of you that may not have experienced trauma to the levels that I and so many others have experienced trauma, this will sound crazy to you. Like, that doesn't make sense. What do you mean? We can just snap out of it. We can just be okay. And I think that's one of the things that is so challenging when other people look at you and you're all made up and you look like you have it together. And the optics of a thing makes you look like you got it together. But really deep down inside, you are shattered. You are torn, right? And people put that shame and that blame on you. And trauma was not your fault, right? That's why I say trauma was not your fault. However, recovery is our responsibility, right? We can't help it that something happened in our childhood that caused our brain to split, right? And I call it splitting because part of your brain says, I cannot handle this. This is too much. And that part of you shrinks in. And now you're operating on a portion of who you are meant to be. So let that resonate with you a little bit. That's what trauma is. When we say we're dedicated to unraveling the complexities of trauma and its pervasive impact, but hold on. We don't bring a challenge without a resolution. We say that there is a journey towards holistic recovery and realignment, and we are going to bring on expert after expert after expert after expert to help us to put these systems together. Now, it'll be up to you. When we say recovery is your responsibility, it'll be up to you to put your pieces together, to put your personal plan together. We're going to give you the goods, right? And it's up to you to gather what resonates with you. And I used to say, eat the meat, get rid of the fat. I say, remember, this is personal. And for me, it's personal. What worked for me may not work for you, but what worked for somebody else, you might pull a piece of that. You might say, hey, this meditation, this worked for me. Hold on, this patch, wow, it's really helping me to balance my brain, and I needed that extra help. See, for me, and I'm getting excited, I'm getting all ahead of myself. But let me tell y'all, when your person meets your purpose, ooh, I tell you, when your full person meets your purpose, right? It's time for us to get rid of the makeup. It's time for us to, what metaphor can I use for the men? Unloosen your tie. Maybe that's the one. Ladies, let's take the makeup off, and men, let's unloosen your tie. You know how you feel when you come down from, like, you've been out all day, or you come in and it's time to say, okay, I need to relax. I need to unwind. Well, that's what we're about to do. We're about to unwind this whole thing about trauma. But because I got ahead of myself, I just want to go back and bring it down just a little bit, because what we are looking to do, we are looking, and I said this before, if your radiance has ever felt muted, man, think about that. Like I and thousands of others, you are in the right place to reignite the inner light, to come out of those shadows of trauma and become trauma aware. A lot of times, or oftentimes in some cases, there's not even awareness that the trauma is there, right? So this is the place to get the goods. Okay, we're going to get rid of this trauma discrimination. And if it's not a phrase, we're going to coin the phrase, because people that have suffered from trauma, there is a stigma around that, and people will hold that over your head. They'll treat you different about it. But guess what? When we become trauma aware, then we can educate other people around us. I've heard people say, you get triggered too fast. You are too sensitive, or you are too this or too that. You know what? It's okay to accept that. Yes, I am triggered. It's maybe not because maybe because I'm not too sensitive. Maybe I need to be more aware of what those triggers are. And I need to educate the people around me about those triggers, right? I need to let them know this does something to me. When you react this way, or when you do this, this is how I feel. So we can start having more conversations around helping to educate people about trauma and how it affects everybody. We don't want to wait until a huge issue, a tragedy, or something happens, and then we say, why? Oh my goodness, she was so nice. Oh my goodness, he was so nice. And then we say, oh, we saw the signs, right? But nobody did anything about it. And then tragedy hit. So let's pull it back a little bit, and let's get into why this trauma informed movement is so personal to me. Okay. I was in a terrible, debilitating car accident that caused multiple painful injuries, and I was told by my doctors that I had plateaued and that I would need bilateral knee replacement surgery to avoid being in a wheelchair for the rest of my life. Think about that, right? For somebody coming in and talk to you about that, and that's what you feel that you're going to have to face. But see, at that point, I'd already gone through multiple modalities of rehabilitation, of physical therapy, vestibular therapy, occupational therapy, and I could name the gamut of all the therapies that I've gone under, or that I've had to go through. Then we want to go to twice. I had to go under anesthesia for them to unball my body. My body was so tight from the impact of the accident. They had to put me to sleep in order to release some of my muscles. But see, I began to pray, because I'm a praying woman. So I went into prayer and began to pray. And then I went on searching for natural methods that would help me to recover. Then my search led me to naturopathic medicine and philosophies. I didn't know anything about naturopathic medicine. I had no idea that this was even available to us, right? Which a lot of us don't. We think there's only one way, but no, we do have a choice. My attention was on relieving my pain, creating better performance in my mind, my body, my spirit, and my soul, my life, period. I was a divorced mom of 3 children, and they were depending on me. And that became my driving force. I kept telling myself along the way, and self-talk is so vitally important. We must pay attention to what we're telling ourselves. If we're telling ourselves we can overcome, we can recover, we can realign. As we continue to hear ourselves say that, it helps to build confidence. It helps to build resilience. So I kept telling myself that this was not my destiny. God promised me so much more. I kept studying, and I started studying various disciplines in natural medicine. I discovered something that Hippocrates said to us. He said, let food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food. This resonated deeply within me. My studies led me even further to discover my connection and my passion to all things natural. As I continued my studies, I began to apply what I learned. So I learned deep stretching. I applied that. I learned that arnica is one of the amazing herbs that help us with pain. So then I learned about different herbs that help with circulation. I learned about tart cherry so it could help me to fall asleep, right? Because I had an issue with falling asleep. So I learned all of these different herbs that would help me with all these different circumstances. And I said, wow, this is really something else. Now, what if I put all of this, or learned how to put all of this into a salve? And that's where Soothing Salve was born. I created a soothing salve with over 30 herbs that would help us to rehabilitate, that will help us to recover, that will help us without all of the side effects, without all of the harmful toxins. Okay. I got more and more excited as I continue to progress, as I continue to recover. Now, not without relapse, because I have suffered my share of relapse. I remember going into my therapist's office one day, and she said, well, she had tears in her eyes, and I think I caught her off guard, and she was going over my chart, and she looked at me and she said, I have patients that have gone through much less than what you have gone through. I can't get them to get out of the bed. And my issue with you is I can't get you to get in the bed. Did y'all hear what she said? It was my state of mind. Because if I had gotten in the bed, I kept hearing in my mind, if I get in that bed, I am not going to get out. Right? That means if I pull the covers over my head and let depression and all of that overcome me, then I was not going to get out of the bed. So I was labeled that I was being rebellious, that I wasn't listening, that I wouldn't follow my plan, but I had a greater plan. God had given me a plan, and I did not know until of late that my plan was that, or God's plan for me and my purpose was for me to be able to put a recovery realignment plan together and be able to help other people with that plan. Y'all, this tape today is raw, right? I am uncovering what I have gone through for many, 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 many years. And oftentimes, people, my family, people around me, nobody knew that I was in the kind of pain that I have been in. Because when I was a little girl, my daddy called me smiling faces. That's because I would cry. Tears would pour down my eyes, and I had this big smile on my face, and I would say, I'm okay. My mind, even then, I'm okay. I'm okay. Well, as I continue my journey, I was knocked down by many setbacks, relapses, and just plain life hurdles. In therapy, I was diagnosed, and again, I'm being transparent because I know that this is going to reach out and help somebody else, right? And it's also therapy for me to finally say, phew, I'm letting this out. I'm putting this down. I'm laying it out. And somebody is going to be able to benefit from this, right? So in therapy, I was diagnosed with anxiety, complex PTSD, depression, and this is only to name a few trauma-related hurdles that I would have needed, or that I needed to climb and conquer, because I wanted to be successful in my recovery and in my life. As we continue to go down this path, as we embark upon this journey of recovery and realignment together, I will give you even more details, and you will also hear more details in our upcoming book, The Pathway to Recovery. It's going to be phenomenal, I tell you. It is already phenomenal, right? We're in the final stages of of publishing. So it'll be out later this year in 2024. It's The Pathway to Recovery. Dynamic authors around the world, right? We didn't crossed over into international waters, y'all, because this recovery journey and this trauma or get trauma reform movement, informed movement, is not just local, not just here. It's all over. Trauma has touched everybody if you really, really, really think about it. Okay. So I will share more and more details about this pathway. Now, this Get Trauma Informed podcast is going to be unlike any other. So if you don't like different, if you don't like raw, if you don't like real, this may not be the podcast for you. But if you want the real deal, the truth, the authenticity, if you want to really, really, really understand trauma and its effects and how, not just the challenge, but how do I put a plan together and how do I live my greater days being better than my days that I've suffered the trauma and that I've hid the trauma and that I have not dealt with it. If I want my latter days to be greater, then how do I get that? Wellness Coach Liz, help me. All right, I'm raising my hand. I'm here to help because one of my taglines is I help survivors realign, recover mind, body, spirit. I added soul there, y'all, because we got some stuff coming up about soul fragmentation that's going to blow your socks off. It blew mine off. I went through an 8-week course. I'm telling you, oh my gosh. And it was so incredibly life-changing for me. It was amazing, 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 right? We don't understand the depths that we have to go through, just like a stepping stone. We have to climb those steps and climb out of those ditches. Trauma is like a deep, dark hole that holds on to you, right? And as you keep trying to climb up out that hole, you keep trying to climb out the hole. There are people that will help you to get out of that hole of darkness, right? We just have to gather this whole community up together and push forward on this movement. So let me keep going, all right? So let's talk a little bit more about the accident, okay? So the accident, I talk a lot about that in my book, It's Smoothie Time, right? I talk about what it's like to really think about this. Let me paint this picture for you, right? I was driving on the freeway in rush hour traffic, and a car hydroplaned into my driver's side, knocked me all the way up into a tree on the side of the embankment. The tree caught us like a catcher's mitt, right? Caught us and held on to us. When I came to, and the reason I say came to, because my face was implanted into that airbag, right? When I pulled my face up, you could see where my lashes were, where my lipstick was, where my eye makeup was. You could see everything because it was smashed into the pillow. Well, I got out the car and my mother was sitting in the passenger seat. I walked around the back of the car on an incline, right, on a hill, walked around the back, and she said, is the car going to move? She was halfway out, halfway in, and I looked at the gear shift, and the car was still in gear. And I said, oh, my God, I didn't have time to think. I grabbed her, knocked her to the ground, and boom, the car started rolling back. Don't tell me that that we don't have a mighty God, right? Whatever your belief is, mine, I believe in God because he helped that car up by that tree until we got out of that car and was on the ground in safety. But when I woke up 5 days later, everything hurt. That's the power of adrenaline, y'all. That's what adrenaline does, right? I am going to continue to share more about the alternative to traditional medicine because that's the route I took. Because when I first started going through this whole recovery process, I didn't like the traditional medicines. The prescription medications made me sick. Everything that I took made me sick. Doctor said, no, it cannot be possible that everything made you sick. My body rejected it. My body said, no, it would not. Everything, the side effects were worse than the issues that I was having. And I don't know what could be worse than all of that pain. But anyhow, we're going to keep on going. So that's my first book. It's Smoothie Time. It talks about the accident, and it gives us all kinds of fun, amazing, wonderful recipes. My second book, The Daddy-Daughter Dynamic, I'm chapter 2 of that collaborative project. It earned us a title of bestseller, right? Never, ever give up. In that book, in my chapter, it gives you more insight into trauma, into the trauma that I suffered growing up as a child in a domestic violence home, and the trauma that follows a child into adulthood after witnessing violence perpetuated from one parent to the other. And we go deeper, deeper in that story. And also again, in the pathway to recovery. That's my third book, and that is also a collaborative project, and we'll get more information about that as we go along in the Trauma Informed podcast. You'll get to meet some of the amazing authors that are absolutely phenomenal and courageous warriors in this trauma movement, right? Because we can't fix what we don't uncover, right? We can't fix it if we stifle it and swallow it. We can't fix it. So what's the alternative? Stay sick in our trauma, or open it up and say, you know what? Trauma was not my fault. Recovery, however, is my responsibility. And part of that responsibility is becoming aware and understanding that there is a way for you to recover, right? So we're going to talk about and unravel with some of the other experts. What does the inner snowman mean? This is the inner working of our being, the inner child, the inner adult, the inner adolescence. How does that all come together, right? What does it mean for us to
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Today's episode is sponsored by Oasis Wellness Center's home of Soothing Salve, an organic pain relief salve infused with over 30 natural herbs. It fights inflammation, provides pain relief, relieves stiffness, relieves dry and itchy skin, and it also improves circulation. Oasis Wellness Center's mission is dedicated to relieving pain, promoting relaxation, and restoring mobility. In order to grab your jar today, contact us at www.oasiswellnessctrs.com. Now we return to our Get Trauma Informed conversation. To help that child to be safe, right? And that child represents you, right? That child, or whatever age you suffered that trauma, okay? It's like I was listening to Tyler Perry's story. I was listening to his documentary, and I almost fell off the couch, y'all. Let me tell you, I almost fell off the couch because he talked about his trauma as a child and how his little boy was being beaten. And he talked about how that little boy ran and he could see it, right? And so we have to go deeper than just the physical. We got to think about the spiritual, right? His little boy ran. And when he said, I could not get him to come back, that little boy in him that was getting beat at, I believe he was between 6 and 8, but that little boy that was getting beat on that fence that day, part of him separated, part of him kept running, right? And he couldn't get him to come back because the little boy was in fear. He was traumatized, right? So that part of himself separated. And so when we have our experts to come on and talk about soul fragmentation and what that means, that resonated with me because that little boy was running for his life, right? And so when he separated, Big Tyler, now a grown man, right, now have to go through life without that part of him because that part is still afraid. So let's take that for an example. We can take that, and now there are therapies that can help to bring that little boy back because now we've created a safe space as an adult. And as an adult, now your voice matters. I'm not doing it justice right now. I'm just giving you a little snippet about what's to come because it helps us to really understand. In these individual conversations that I'm having with people, it helps us to really understand how deep trauma really is and how, wow, if I understand a thing, then I can work through it. And then I truly, truly can become a whole person again, right? Right. So my studies continue. I kept my studies and kept going and kept going. And then it led me into this painful emotional trauma that I again and many others have suffered, which is childhood trauma. Okay. And just to name a few of the traumas, and that's why my situation was complex PTSD, right? Childhood trauma, domestic violence trauma. Yes, suffered that too. Betrayal trauma. Yes, suffered that too. Abandonment trauma. Yes, suffered that too. The list continues to go on, and we're going to unravel each one of those so you can identify with which trauma you've suffered and how you can recover and realign. I was sitting down and I was listening to John Walsh. I was in the midst of a really bad domestic violence relationship, right? And this is where I say, when you've gone through trauma, your whole life is affected. Your children's lives are affected. How is your life affected? Because I say your picker is off, right? You start picking for me, a different man in a different, I'm sorry, I'm gonna say it right, the same man in a different body. That's because this trauma is attracting that, right? So until you uncover it, right? And people say, let's, keep your business to yourself. Hold it in. Don't take your business out of the house. Well, if you don't run for help, it's going to keep on coming up, coming up, coming up, coming up, and then it's going to come up and it's going to explode. That's why we have so many explosive situations, so much road rage going on, so many people, doing all kinds of violent things to masses amount of people because they have trauma that was stifled and kept swallowing it, swallowing it, swallowing it. And just like Denzel in Flight, they said, no more. I can't. That's one of my favorite movies because he said he had one more lie to tell, y'all, and he could not tell that lie. You know why? Because that was it. And that's just like a pressure cooker. That's it. And that's how trauma is. It's like being in a pressure cooker, and all of a sudden something triggers you, and boom, there you go. And it's not even in your person or in your character to respond that way. But guess what? That's what trauma looks like, right? So I just wanted everybody to know, lean in a bit. It won't go away. Hear me clearly. Trauma won't just magically go away, and it does not recover on its own. It's mean. Trauma is progressive. It's harsh. And it's I'm gonna say mean again, because if it's not handled, it will get worse. Okay. I became a certified addiction abuse recovery coach, a certified trauma recovery practitioner with a special certification in counseling and ministry in search of solutions for my inner brokenness. I knew that my pain and suffering was not in vain. Through my recovery and realignment journey, I discovered a place of peace and transformation that I will continue to share with you. It is my prayer that by being transparent in my story, my struggles, and sharing my realignment, my resilience and my realignment and recovery journey, it will extend an olive branch of hope and resources to those searching for real solutions. Hear me clearly, real solutions. I will provide a blueprint on how I put my shattered puzzle pieces back together and how I'm putting my life back together. It is my hope that others will be able to use my blueprint and pull their broken, shattered pieces back together and live a life full of purpose that God intended for us to live. So, in each episode, you all, this is what you have to look forward to. We're going to welcome a diverse lineup of guests ranging from courageous individuals who have bravely navigated their own paths through the turmoils of trauma recovery to leading experts across various fields who bring valuable insight and innovative solutions for holistic recovery. Our aim is to provide you with a comprehensive understanding of trauma, its many manifestations, and the latest research, the most effective practices for holistic recovery, and again, I say real solutions. We are excited to share that in addition to our regular episodes, we will occasionally present focused mini-series addressing specific demographics. These series will offer additional supportive techniques and resources tailored to help those demographics on their unique journeys of trauma recovery and realignment. Okay. So one of those things that we talk about in is entrepreneurship, resilience in entrepreneurship. Yes, folks that have suffered trauma or are in post trauma and have the desire to be successful entrepreneurs, we're going to give you some tips on how to successfully become a leader in your business. And wait, we got to put a line there, in your business and in your personal, because your personal life, that's also a business as well. Through these mini series, we will dive deeper into the nuanced experience of specific groups, ensuring that every listener finds support, resilience, and their own voice in their personal journey towards recovery, realignment, and empowerment. Whether you're seeking to understand your own experience more deeply, looking for ways to support someone else, or simply interested in the broader conversation surrounding trauma, mental health, and holistic wellness, the Get Trauma Informed podcast offers a space for discovery, empathy, and empowerment. Join us as we dive into personal stories of resilience, explore innovative therapeutic approaches, and shed light on the holistic solutions that can lead us toward true transformation, recovery, and realignment in a safe space. Listen, y'all, this path may be bumpy, but the destination is a place of profound transformation, growth, and peace. Together, let's navigate the twists and turns of trauma recovery with courageousness and compassion. You all, you know what? One of the things that you are going to discover about me is that I have a quirky personality, right? I think that this whole trauma issue is a trauma situation is very serious, is very cold, is very hard, is very scary. I have lived through it since I would say 3 years old, but I'm not going to say three. I've lived through it from my mother's womb, because any baby that is in their mom's womb and they are experiencing, the mom is experiencing domestic violence, and she's being beaten while the child is in womb, the child receives all of that. And so as the baby's brain is developing, the baby's nerves are developing, the baby is receiving all of those fear messages. So fear can start from the womb, and as trauma continues to perpetuate itself, we have fear, we have uncertainty, we have an issue with confidence, we have an issue with imposter syndrome, doubt, overwhelm, and the list goes on again. But I'm here to tell you, I am very passionate about the Get Trauma Informed movement, because it is my belief that if the world was more trauma informed together, we would stop re traumatizing and avoid the tragedies that are the result of hundreds of people suffering in silence. As a society, for the most part, we wait until tragedy strikes and then ask all the why questions. At that point, it's too late to reverse the harsh realities that are the result of communities not addressing trauma. I want to say this, and I want to quote Brianna West. She did an article, and in her article, she says, "What happened to you was not your fault. It was not something you asked for. It was not something you deserved. What happened to you was not fair. You were merely collateral damage on someone else's warpath, an innocent bystander who got wrecked out of proximity." Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. I hope you heard that. I hope you heard that clearly. You were an innocent bystander who got wrecked out of proximity. So, people, when we talk about becoming trauma aware and helping others understand this, we just sometimes look at what's present in front of us. Oh, this person acted irrationally. Oh, this person did that. Oh, this person did that. But let me tell you, it goes much, much, much deeper. And we are here at the Get Trauma Informed podcast to not only bring you this information, but give you real solutions, right? Real stories, real people that have overcome, and people that are going through their journey right now, because we're always recovering. But to have a community of trauma informed people around you is like, Oh my goodness. It's like standing on the top of a cliff and being able to finally just fall back and know that you're going to fall into a pillow. Wow. I closed my eyes right there and I saw that. That you're going to fall into that. And that if you do fall, like Muhammad Ali says, fall on your back, because if you can look up, you can get up. I want to encourage everybody to continue to plug into our Get Trauma Informed podcast. Like I said, today was authentic, rough, it was genuine, unedited, unfiltered. And I'm just so grateful at all of the people that have been so supportive of me in this journey, those that understood, those that didn't, those that stood by me. And I tell you, we still have a long, long way to go. We're going to talk about all of the resources and tools that we have used successfully to help us to overcome and to help us to continue to recover. So that's about it for me today. I just wanted to make sure that I got it out as we go on this transformational journey to reignite our inner light. I am your host, wellness coach Liz Blanding, and I did want to answer the other two questions that I posed to all of the guests that come on the Get Trauma Informed podcast. One of the final questions is, drum roll please, how has trauma empowered and inspired you? Well, trauma has inspired me and empowered me because I understand that there is a blueprint, or there are several blueprints to help us to get through. I also finally got over I'm gonna say the Patty Perfect syndrome, that I don't have to be perfect. That's one of the things that we suffer from when we go through trauma. We feel like we're always hyper vigilant. We always feel like we have to be perfect. We have to prove ourselves. We have to be this perfect person in order to be accepted, because so many people look down on us and so many people look at us side-eyed when they find out that we had trauma. Judge Lynn Toller, oh my God, I take my hat off to her. She talked about it in a short the other day. She said that she accepted the fact that part of her brain just doesn't work like everybody else's, doesn't function like everybody else's, but it doesn't mean that we're the misfits or we have to be thrown to the curb or anything. It sometimes I believe that it actually enlightens or ignites a creativity inside of you, because in order to get through it, you have to be very, very creative. And so it has inspired me to jump out here full throttle, take the covers off, finally exhale, and be my full blown out self. As quirky as I may be, I'm well studied, and I understand that we are all human, and we are all so much more fragile than what we let on to be, or let on to. That's the way to finish that up right there, that we let on to. And the other question is, what would I say to someone faced with trauma? I would say, hold your head up. There are 970 million people that face mental health issues, and it is not your fault. Recovery, however, is your responsibility. So, what I would say to you is, hold your head up high, reach out for us, and we will hold your hand and be your supportive community. Don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't let anybody else shame you. Remind people that yes, you might be sensitive to certain things and you may have triggers, but that does not diminish your value, does not diminish who you are as a person. I say this over and over again, and I'll continue to say it. God gave us all our unique fingerprint, and we're our only us. So we have to embrace it, and we have to make sure that we don't let anybody step over our boundaries, and that we really understand what boundaries really are. So that's all that I have for us today. I am sure that as my person continues to walk in my purpose, there's going to be so much more in store. Thank you for listening. It's time to buckle up. No more suffering in silence. Our Power Pack journey to recovery and realignment starts now. Remember, you were collateral damage on someone else's warpath. Trauma is not your fault. Recovery, however, is your responsibility. I'm your host, Wellness Coach Liz Blanding, and this is the Get Trauma Informed podcast.